Alright guys, Ms. Turner again for Foley video number 3. So here I'm going to show you how to irrigate a catheter and how to get a sample. So there's a couple of different ways in which we can get a sample, which we did talk about in class the other day. But I'm just going to reiterate and show you how you would get that and how you would empty this Foley catheter. So to go in, I'm going to again let Ms. Johnson know what I'm going to do. Ms. Johnson, I'm going to get a sample from your Foley catheter today. It shouldn't cause you any discomfort. It'll take me about 5 minutes and I'll be out of your hair. So the first thing we want to do if we are going to get a sample is, if the catheter just went in, if I've just done inserting the catheter and I needed a sample, I could take it from the bottom of the bag. I could come underneath here, I could open the clamp here, I could get a small sample into my sterile container, and I could take a sample that way. But again, it's only when we very first insert the Foley catheter. After that initial period, you got to get the sample in a different fashion. So what we actually have to do is go in probably about 15 or 20 minutes before you're ready to get the sample, get your little blue clamps here, and you're going to go up to the catheter and we're going to clamp it off. We're going to clamp it off a little below the port. And you can see right now that there's no urine in there. You're not going to expect there to be any urine in there. That's why you're going to come back in about 15 or 20 minutes and hopefully there's going to be a little bit of urine in there. I'm going to make there be a little bit of urine in mine. So we'll pretend like it's about 15 or 20 minutes later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take it right from this port here. So what I need is my gloves. I need an empty syringe and I need my alcohol swabs. And I still need my sterile specimen cup. So I'm going to open this, put the cap up. I'm not going to touch the inside of it and contaminate it. Take my alcohol swab. I'm going to go over to the port. I'm going to scrub my hub at least 15 seconds, just like you learned with your IV. I'm going to screw my catheter, my syringe on here, and I'm going to pull back, and you can see that I'm getting some urine there. Hopefully I would get a little bit more. You need at least about 5 mLs, usually 10 mLs is the most recommended. Unscrew it. I'm going to put this right into my sterile specimen cup, again without touching it. The outside of the syringe is not sterile, so I'm going to put that right in there. Now I have my specimen. I'm going to label it with the patient's label, depending on where you work, that'll vary. Put my my cap back on and send it to the lab. Urine culture needs to go on ice, so make sure that we put that on ice. Urinalysis can just go down to the lab in a normal lab specimen bag. Okay, so that's how to get a sample from either the bag if you just put it in the catheter in, or otherwise you need to do it up here from this port. The other thing is, once you're done, you got to make sure you undo this clamp, otherwise the urine's going to stay sitting in the bladder and it's not going to be able to drain appropriately. I want to show you also how to empty a Foley catheter. So we're going to use our urinal here and we're going to empty the catheter. This needs to be emptied at least once a shift, and that's how we measure it for our intake and output. I'm going to hold it up just so that Ms. Palmer can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, you're never going to put this bag above the level of the patient. You don't want any of that urine that's in the tubing here to go back into your patient, because that is going to contaminate the patient. Okay, so normally I would leave this hanging on the edge of the bed here. I'm going to open my urinal. I'm going to bend down. I'm going to use the little clamp here. You can see how it's on closed right now. I'm going to switch it to open. Don't open it until you have that urinal underneath it. I'm going to switch it to open. I'm going to let it drain. See, everything's coming out of the bag. Once I'm done, I'm going to close this until it snaps and I hear it click. Then I know it's closed all the way. If you don't, you're going to come back and you're going to see some urine on the floor here. Then you can take your measurements right from here. So you can see this is very specific on this urinal here. You'll measure it, you'll assess it, you'll look at it, and you'll chart it for your intake and output.
Ms. Turner, why wouldn't you take it off the bag?
The bag isn't accurate in terms of measurement. It depends on how the bag is hanging. it could be hanging a little bit like this, and you're not going to get a valid measurement on this bag here. So you always want to take it out of the bag to measure it. Now I want to talk a little bit about irrigating. So we watched a little video on it in class the other day. They had an irrigation set. You're gonna make sure that this stays sterile, and you put sterile water into your container. You're gonna draw up the specified amount, so 30, 60, whatever mLs. We're gonna go over to our patients. And here we're going to do some opened irrigation. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to open this. I'm going to grab my syringe that's got the sterile water in it. I'm going to hook it up like this. I'm going to instill it into the bladder. I'm going to clamp it back off. Hook my Foley bag back up. And then I'm going to let it drain out. So depending on how much is ordered, that's what you're going to do. Again, that's open irrigation. We don't often want to do open irrigation if we have another choice. The only other choice we talked about was doing closed irrigation, and that's where you'd have to use a flush like this that was either pre-filled or you filled it with sterile solution, and you can actually irrigate through this port here. Again, we would need our clamp though, and we would need to clamp it down here, or in the video you saw the woman just kind of bent it over like this, so that when you push that solution in, it goes up into the bladder and not down into the bag. So two different ways that you can irrigate a catheter there. The last thing that I want to show you is how to remove a catheter. So when you're going to remove a catheter, it's much less of a painful procedure for your patient than it is putting it in. A couple things you're going to need: an empty 10 ml syringe to deflate your balloon, and a towel. I always put a towel underneath my patient because you will get a couple drops of urine that come out when you remove the catheter. You want to tell her what you're doing and take a nice deep breath when you get ready to do it. First thing we're going to do is put the syringe on here, deflate the balloon. Make sure that it's completely deflated. You want to be able to pull back on that syringe and really make sure that balloon is completely deflated. We're going to tell our patient, okay, Mrs. Smith, I'm going to take your catheter out. I want you to take a nice deep breath, and on 3, I'm going to take it out. 1, 2, 3. Pull out as fast as you can, as long as you're not meeting resistance, and put it right into the towel. And you can see there that I did get some urine that came out. That's going to be a normal expectation because there's probably a little urine in that catheter. You're going to get rid of this. Get rid of the syringe into the sharps container. This can go into the red bag or to the regular trash if you've emptied all of the urine out of it, which you should empty it out. You can either do that before or after the procedure. I prefer to empty the bag before I'm doing the procedure. That way I'm just ready to get it into the trash when I'm done. And again, you want to document. We want to talk about, did the catheter come out okay? Was there any obvious trauma at the site? And we want to document the time so that we know when that 8 hours is up to make sure that they have voided within that 8 hours. And that wraps up video number 3.